Recently I've been thinking about the things we collect in our lives. Some happen by chance, others by intent. But why do we collect things? Is it for sentimentality or because we can't let go? I don't know. I do know, however, that I've probably lost more things that I've collected than I'd care to admit. Which is odd because at some point those things actually mattered to me and then they stopped mattering. Of course there are collections that I still have. You know, I have Beanie Babies. Boy, were we wrong about those. Some interesting rocks, and my cameras. I intentionally set out to get the Beanie Babies that I own, and I wanted a rock collection, but my cameras, well, that's a slightly different story. Some were bought, some were found, but at no point in my life did I ever think I would have a camera collection. And I'm gonna just say this from the start, my camera collection pales in comparison to some people's camera collections. So this camera is a Fisher-Price camera made by Kodak, and this was the first camera that I ever owned that was mine. It was owned by another person and I guess given to me, I'm not sure. This is the camera that I took a lot of photos of when I was really young, like between like 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe even into 12 or 13. This camera is probably the most sentimental camera that I own, simply because it was my first. And then there's this camera. It's a Vivitar. It's a film camera as well. It's the camera that my parents used to capture my childhood. I would say this is one of the cameras that I'm more emotionally drawn to, simply because, you know, I used it growing up. My parents used it. A lot of my childhood was documented using this camera. This is also a Vivitar film camera. This was given to me by my aunt and uncle. And so this was the second camera that was ever truly my camera. And, you know, there's nothing fancy about it. This camera doesn't draw me the way these other cameras do, simply because I didn't use it that long. I got it right before everybody started switching to digital. So, this camera belonged to my sister, and now I own it. I took it from her because she doesn't use it. This is a Kodak Instamatic. My mother used this probably before I was born. I don't know when she stopped using it. And I found it, and now it's mine, despite the fact that it would be very difficult to actually take pictures with. This is a disc film camera. Now, I know my parents used this to take pictures of me when I was very little, like a baby, because I have negatives of myself. But you can't buy film for it anymore, much like the previous camera. And so it's very difficult to, you know, use it. So with those last three cameras, I realized that I was actually starting a camera collection because I was finding cameras that were utterly useless to me, except to say I owned them. Now when I first got into photography, I started using my grandfather's DSLR. And while it worked, I wanted my own camera, but I didn't really want a digital camera. I mean, I did, but I also really wanted a film camera that was really good. And at the time, the only film camera that I had was that Fisher-Price one, and I wanted a 35mm. So I bought this on eBay. It's an Olympus OM10. First Olympus camera I've owned. It was the first really solid camera that I've ever owned, even if it is considered amateurish compared to some of the other ones. And it was exactly what I wanted when I bought it, and it was also really cheap, which helps. Then came my first digital camera. Now this is an Olympus EPL2, and it is red. My parents bought it for me for Christmas. I used it for almost 2 years as my primary camera. And I used it until I got the camera that I'm currently shooting on, which is an Olympus OMD EM1. That's why you can't see it, because I'm using it to shoot video. So that's my camera collection. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on Friday.